everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of RECP Radio, and we are your hosts. I am Janis Gaines, the Executive Director here at Real Estate Closing Path. Also joining me today is Sandi Donaldson. She is our lead trainer, and then Pierre Ballone, who is Head of Marketing and also Assistant Trainer. And we bring three very unique perspectives to the industry. I am actually the outsider. I have a very short history with real estate, and actually most of my career and background has been in education. So I bring a unique perspective. Sandi Donaldson is the voice of experience. She has our expert point of view with over 40 years in the industry. We're really grateful for her insights. And then also joining us is Pierre Ballone, who is representing the next generation. And we appreciate her perspective as well and what the future holds for young people in the real estate industry. So our topic today is dealing with fraud and the importance of cybersecurity and all there is to know and understand about that. We each have something that we wanted to share just based on our own experience and information that we have seen recently, and just wanted to bring it to all of you. And first up, I'm going to let Sandi share. I know that you read an article recently on title fraud that could really be relevant.
I did. And first of all, I would like to say I recently participated in a webinar where they talked about what types of properties, what kind of things the fraudsters look for. So, they were basically saying property that is undeveloped or unoccupied, like a vacant property or a vacation home that somebody's not at very much, a bunch of mail in the mailbox that indicates it's not routinely tended to, lends itself to changes could be made and not noticed. So that was essentially the thing. If there's no mortgage, so then you don't have, and you can search on the deed index to see if there's a security deed. So you can see that there's no lender monitoring all of that. There's not a lot of deed activity. Somebody bought it and they've owned it for a long time, or they've sold it once. If you've got a townhome in the city that turns over a lot, then that's something that would bring attention to itself. So, interestingly, also distressed properties, and that leads me to the article that I read was about an elderly woman who had owned a property for over 40 years.
Wow.
And she had over $100,000 equity in it, and she was in danger of foreclosure. And so she was contacted by a company that buys deeds out of foreclosure, which, it's a matter of opinion whether these companies are legit or not. I mean, their business is legal, and in a lot of ways they do bail you out. It's just that the equity they pay you is less than what you could get if you sold it on the open market. And certainly you would end up in a better financial position usually than if you did a short sale. But this woman was taken advantage of, and this company bought her deed, and then they sold it to somebody else, and she was told she was being evicted and she never received a penny. So, how does that happen? And it wasn't the middle company, it was the company that bought from them that was fraudulent. And, basically the thing was, when as a settlement agent, when somebody is buying a property, money comes into the settlement agent's escrow account from the lender or from the buyer if it's a cash deal. In this case, it would have been cash, but the attorney never got any money. So that's a big red flag, right?
That's a clue.
And the truth be told, anybody can fraudulently prepare a deed and take it to the county to record, but you have to just produce ID that you are the person. Well, if you're going to fraudulently prepare an deed, you've got a fake ID.
Fake
right?
ID.
So, it's not that hard to do. And it's a lot, it's very cumbersome on the county recording staff to go through all the steps to verify identity every single time. You know, um, it once was when we mailed the deeds to the county for recording. And if there was any reason they were rejecting the deed, a typo or anything like that, they mailed it back to us. And so you can see that in that process, there was more opportunity for somebody to intercept it and create a fraudulent deed. Now, with the advent of e-recording, that's less common because we're uploading it directly from the settlement agent's office. But if you've got somebody that's in the business of doing this, and fraudsters are in business, right? So they've created a fake e-recording account. I mean, there's a lot that can be done.
It's so easy to do, to create these fake accounts.
It is so easy. And so again, I read another article that was saying, how do you stop that? And one thing is that you monitor your deed. You look on the deed index, or you hire a service that does that for you. Now, you can do it yourself. If you hire a service, they can't prevent it from happening. But they can tell you when it has happened, and the fee that you pay to the service pays for legal assistance to rectify the situation. So there is that. But you've got to pay attention, which it just seems so, like something you shouldn't have to worry about, right?
It should be a one and done and not need constant monitoring.
Right. But you do have to pay attention to your deed. A couple of other things is that pick up your bills, check your mail, make sure there's not overflowing stuff in the mailbox so somebody doesn't think, oh, this property is never monitored.
Just abandoned. Right.
And also, this is part of the reason we have title insurance. So, again, when somebody's closing on a transaction and they want to waive their owner's title insurance, this is why we discourage them against that.
Yeah.
Because title insurance would also help you in the legal struggle if it were to happen. As we get more and more technologically advanced, criminals get more and more savvy. So now we have crimes that were never even conceived when I began in this industry, So we have to kind of stay on top of that and keep up with what they're doing so we can know. We just have to mainly pay attention. Look at signatures, look at dates, those kinds of things.
Well, that's so helpful. And it makes me think how important it is to protect our elderly loved ones, because I can see how an elderly person might think, well, I'm not at risk. I'm not even on the computer that much. Maybe they're of a different generation and thinking, well, they certainly could never be hacked. And yet it could still come to them, through another means if they are just a property owner. And again, I appreciate the importance of underscoring the need for an owner's policy and to double check and make sure that does cover, instances of fraud in the future.
You are so right in that. It said senior adults own about 17% of the property in the United States, but more than half, they have more than half the equity.
Yeah. Wow.
So they are prime targets, and because they're less technologically savvy, and by they I mean me, we are the kind of people they look for.
Yeah. And you're right. They probably are also of that generation where they bought and have held a property for 50 years, potentially. So they haven't been looking at it, and they haven't heard some of the same conversations that we're trying to have right now to make people more aware. So really important, Sandi. I appreciate you sharing this.
Sure.
It reminds me of some tips that I have heard also in my time in the industry. We have a great resource in a man named Chris Knowles, who's the president of Beyond Computer Solutions, who specializes in cybersecurity. And some of the things I remember him sharing that stand out to me the most is it is so easy for people to hack into accounts. It doesn't take some high level security or cyber hacker. The software that's available, makes you think that some, teenager in a basement could do it if they tried, that just the access to hacking is so much more prevalent than we would think. And then you might think, oh, that's just a problem for larger firms. They're the ones with all the money. They've got the bigger numbers that would be worth hacking into. And actually from him, I learned it's actually the opposite, because those larger firms are going to have more of the cybersecurity protections and firewalls or insurance to cover, whereas it is the smaller firms that could actually be more at risk, that think, they haven't set aside a budget to have any kind of cybersecurity insurance. And yet even those small transactions could lead to big money or big hacks from outsiders. So don't just think, oh, I'm just a little small firm, or I'm just getting started and I'll deal with that later. It really is something that should be implemented from the foundation. And another thing I remember him sharing is that even when, some kind of fraud alert happens, or you have some kind of, sketchy email that comes through your inbox, hackers are often very patient and wait to strike. So even at the time a fraud happens, it doesn't mean that that they were hacked into your system that very day. That often they are very patient and can be in your system for 6 months and watching and trolling and gathering information and gathering data. And by the time you find out, there could be a whole history of stuff that's already happened and could be too late. So I thought that was really insightful as well, that you might be the last to know, and this could have already been an underground operation or going on. And it's not enough to just have a firewall of, antiviral software on your computer. Chris Knowles talks about everyone in an office or even at home being a human firewall, that you are paying more attention to links and things you're clicking on, sketchy emails, things like that. They often try to create a sense of emergency or urgency that you must click and do this right now or you're going to lose everything. So that's a ploy that they use. You want to be careful about that. And then really the best line of defense is to have what he calls managed security. That someone is in your system and watching and paying close attention when you can't. It'll give you that sense of security so you can focus on your business while someone else is focusing on your tech. So just some good tips that have stood out to me from Chris Knowles over the years. Or I'll go ahead and pass it to Pierre. I know you read an interesting article recently that talks about AI in the future.
Yeah, so definitely related. It's hard to fathom how quickly people who are trying to do nefarious things adapt. They are the first people to jump on new technologies, try new techniques. And if we don't continue to innovate in our career field and as consumers, then we are opening ourselves up to risk for sure. So when we're talking about ways that fraudsters are developing and changing things, they're implementing AI to work for them so they can reach a larger scope of people faster. So right now, we're seeing a lot of that in terms of email automation, like you were talking about, trying to hack in, getting access to people's information. But as we go forward, people that are most at risk, like Sandi said, older people, senior citizens, people who are not as technologically savvy and cannot protect themselves as rapidly. So if there was an alert, they're not the first to jump on it. They might not know about it for months. Right. So when we're looking at things that people are doing, now we're encountering vocal modulation, where they can recreate somebody's voice and use that to call up mortgage companies. People can deepfake image now. So video, you can't trust what you can see anymore. And as time goes on, that's only going to become more sophisticated. remote online notarization was a really big conversation a couple years ago, especially during COVID. A lot of people were doing Zoom signings, and that we had the capability to do that at the time. And I think a lot of consumers are wondering why the process can't be done remotely entirely. And this is one of the reasons why we can't just swap to doing it that way, because now with the way that AI is able to emulate a likeness in video, it's no longer safe for us to be able to trust that that is the person on the other side.
Right. That's so true. When voices can be faked and images can be cloned, and then we're going to get to a point where how do you really know who you're talking to on the other end of that screen? And so it's even more important to have some face-to-face contact in the process. But it will be interesting to see what the future holds, because I know there's a lot of positive sides to AI and the conveniences that it offers, and yet it's entirely new levels of risk. And so I know we're kind of yet to see fully what that's going to bring, but it's just something to be mindful and cautious. And I just want to say, check on your loved ones, right? Let people know what you know, and they don't know what they don't know. Again, and especially that older generation that might feel intimidated and just might need a little more hand holding.
Right.
So my final thought is I encourage everyone just to stay on top of educating yourself, whatever that looks like, whether it's attending webinars, conferences, if you're in the industry for sure, reading articles in magazines or trusted sources like LinkedIn, wherever you like to network professionally. And again, just everyone do your part to keep yourself safe and your loved ones and your community.
I would also encourage everyone to keep good digital hygiene. Just because you've set a strong password one time does not mean that it is an impenetrable fortress. So to keep up on updating our passwords continually, if you are a property owner, check to see, maybe add that to your regular list of things. Every 3 to 6 months, you're checking the deed index just to make sure that your properties are still in your name. There's no harm in checking on those things just to keep yourself protected. And if there was an issue, the faster you get to it, the better.
Better. So true. A good tip. Thanks, Pierre. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for your time and your attention today. We hope we've been able to share some things to help you, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.